All right. So the topic of the evening is all on strategies for more effective behavior change. Right now, why this topic matters, and this is something that this is a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I think can be extremely helpful to so many people, is if you think about it, like if everyone can think of like one thing that they should be doing, but that they're not, it probably doesn't take us very long to come up with something. Like we all have
Correct.
something in mind that is like, oh my gosh, I know I should be doing this, but I'm just not doing it. Like we all have those things out there. I'm no better than anyone else. That the things that we know we should be doing, but for whatever reason, it's just not happening. And so to me, I think it's a good reminder that it's not about what we know, it's about what we actually do with what we know. And to me, a lot of that stems from behavior change and forming good habits. And so that's why I think this is so important because knowledge alone doesn't help us achieve our goals. We have to execute, we have to implement, we have to make all those things that we need to do fit into our lives and our routines, regardless of the chaos that is going on. And so, first thing, what we're going to do, talk real quickly about a couple mistakes that people commonly make when they're trying to change their habits. And then we're going to get into just some very specific strategies for more effective behavior change. And to kind of preface what I'm going to summarize at the end, how I would look at this is that I've got a lot of different strategies that you can use. What I would suggest is just find the one or two things that are going to work most effectively for you, or the one or two things that can help you form those habits. So when you're thinking about like what are the one to two habits that would have the biggest impact on my results, and then all we want to think about is like looking at today, well, what are the one or two strategies that we can use to actually implement those habits and to actually do the thing that we need to do? And so, a couple mistakes that people commonly make when it comes to behavior change. The first thing that I see is often like people will wait for the perfect time to start. And it just, well, I'm going to start, as soon as I get done with blank. I'm going to start as soon as this happens. I tell a lot of stories about my dad and his health suffering, and he's the first person that comes to mind when I think about this. Well, it's really hot out in the summer, so I'll start being more active once it cools down. And then it's cool, and then the winter hits, and it's, well, once it warms up a little. And then, well, I'm really busy once I retire. And then when he retires, well, once something else. Yeah, again, there's always a reason not to start. And so I really try to push people to take imperfect action and go ahead and start, even though the timing might not be perfect. Because again, if you fail but continue to take action and continue to get started, each time, oftentimes, a lot of people will get things will get better and better and better. And so again, just don't wait till the perfect time to start. The second mistake that I see people commonly make when it comes to behavior change is changing too many things at once. First thing that pops into my head is the book Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. Highly recommend that book. But that was the first book that I read on behavior change about a decade ago. And one of the things that really stood out to me was this idea that when you change one habit at a time, you're roughly, the research shows like 80 to 90% likely to succeed. If you change two habits at a time, the odds of implementing and sustaining those changes drops down to just under 50%. But if you try to change three or more habits at a time, the likelihood of executing those changes and sustaining them is less than 10%. And so just keep in mind that the more habits you're trying to change at one time, actually, the less likely you will be to sustain those changes. And then the third suggestion that I would make is it reminds the saying, when you're in a hole, the first thing you need to do is stop digging. And so when things go wrong, don't make them worse. And so common mistake I'll see is people say, well, I already screwed up my diet, so I'll start fresh on Monday. I'm gonna just keep eating whatever I want to eat all weekend until next week. Well, we're already, the holidays are here, so I might as well just keep eating whatever I want and I'll start fresh after the holidays or after I get back from vacation. And so again, when you're in a hole, stop digging. It doesn't need to be a light switch where it's like all on or off. I like to think of our habits as more of a dimmer switch. Maybe you're not executing it as great as you want to, but again, any action you're taking, any time that you can, say no to that dessert or whatever the thing is that you're trying to change, any small action will help. So again, don't treat it as like an all or none or just say, well, I already messed up, so I'm just going to keep going. So those are three of the biggest mistakes that I see around behavior change that we want to avoid. So again, don't wait till the perfect time to start. There's never going to be the perfect time. Don't try to change too many habits at once. And then when you're in a hole, stop digging. Don't think of this like all or none mentality where I already messed up my nutrition, so I'm gonna wait. Or you know what? I'm just since I can't get a full hour workout in, I'm just not gonna do anything. As opposed to well, I can still go for a 10-minute walk. So those are some things we want to avoid. Now, when we're getting into actual specific strategies for behavior change, I've got a long list of things that we can cover here. But the first strategy or tactic that you could use would be to stack your new habit with an existing habit. All right, so stacking habits. Now, what that means is that would be like attaching the new behavior to something you're already doing on a regular basis. All right, so a good example would be I'm already watching TV at night. Well, I could do stretches while I'm watching TV. I'm already talking to my friends in the evening, catching up on the phone. Well, I could go for a walk while I'm on the phone, put my AirPods in. I'm already going to have my coffee first thing in the morning. So I could work on my balance on one leg while I'm having my coffee. Or I could work on my balance, I could balance on one leg while I'm brushing my teeth. So that would be the first tactic would be to stack the new habit with an existing habit. All right, some questions to kind of get the wheel spinning for you around this would be, how could you use your existing routine to help this habit stick? So again, think about what are you doing in your existing routine that maybe this new habit that you want to incorporate, you could attach that to, right? And do them at the same time. So that's the first tactic. The second one is to anchor the new behavior to an existing behavior, right? Slightly different from stacking habits where we're doing two things at once. Anchoring them is this idea that you put the new behavior immediately before or after a habit that you're already doing regularly, right? So this could be something I've done for years, drinking a big bottle of water before having my coffee first thing in the morning. I love to have coffee first thing in the morning. Well, I've anchored drinking water to that. So when I get up, first thing I do, I go in the kitchen, and before I have that coffee, again, I'm going to chug a big glass of water. Another example would be after putting the dishes in the sink after dinner, I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk. And so again, what's something I do every single day? I have dinner and then put the dishes, clean up the kitchen, put the dishes away. I could go for a 10-minute walk immediately after that. So some questions to ask around this tactic would be, what's one thing you're already doing consistently that we could anchor a new habit to? Or what's something you're already doing that we could build this around? Again, I'm gonna have my coffee in the morning. I'm gonna obviously eat dinner and then put the dishes away. So those are the things that I'm already doing, and I could anchor new habits either right before or after them, which is gonna help me improve the likelihood that they're gonna stick. The third strategy that you could use to better implement new behavior would be to shrink the change. This is another one that comes right from the book Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. And the idea, what shrinking the change means is we want to reduce overwhelm by making the first step smaller. It's like if you ever, the saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. All right. When we think about making a new change or a habit, if you look at this as, oh my gosh, I have this like mountain to climb and this like huge undertaking, it's going to feel overwhelming. It's going to stress you out. You're going to be more likely to quit. So if we can shrink the change, it's going to make it more digestible. It's going to make it easier to tackle. And for most people, they're a lot more likely to execute. So, what that would look like would be going for a 10-minute walk instead of a 30-minute walk. If you're not someone that walks regularly, but you want to start walking regularly, that would be a great place to start. Don't say, oh man, a 30-minute walk, I can't do that, or I don't have time for that. Again, just shrink the change. Go for a 10-minute walk. Something that I've recommended to a lot of clients over the years to help them with their nutrition would be keeping a food journal. I, myself included, no one likes keeping a food journal. I completely understand that. So instead of saying, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to keep a food journal, how about like we just keep a food journal for dinner or lunch or breakfast or whatever the meal is that you're most struggling with? Again, instead of saying, man, I don't want to keep a food journal all day, every day, just how about just dinner? Or I'm going to keep a food journal from 4 p.m. on, or again, whatever that window of time is that you find yourself struggling with. Another example would be, instead to shrink the change and to make it feel less overwhelming, instead of trying to overhaul all of your nutrition, how about we just replace like a couple meals a week with maybe like a protein shake and a piece of fruit? So again, if you're overwhelmed by the idea of, oh my gosh, I need to change everything I'm eating, then don't do that. Just change a couple meals a week. 2 to 4 meals a week can go a long way. And so some questions to ask to help with this, to help get you thinking, would be, if you only had 5 minutes, what could you do in regards to implementing this new behavior? If you only had 5 minutes, what could you do? Again, we want to shrink the change. Or another question, what's the absolute smallest version of this habit that you're 100% confident you could do daily? Again, if we want to talk about being active and going for a walk, maybe it could be walking a lap around your house. Could you walk one lap around your house? Again, that's getting like insanely small and really shrinking the change. But if that's what it takes, then start there. So whatever habit you're trying to change, just think about how can you shrink the first steps? How can you make it so that it will feel less overwhelming? The next strategy that we're looking at is what's called using an implementation intention. All right, now this comes straight from the book Atomic Habits by author James Clear. Brilliant book, by the way. Highly recommend if you haven't read it yet. But the idea of an implementation intention is to clarify when, where, and how a behavior will be completed, and potentially who, with whom. So if there's another party involved. So when, where, and how will a behavior be completed? So it could be, I'm going to schedule a 30-minute walk in the evening with my neighbor at the park across the street every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6:30 p.m. It could be, I'm going to schedule my meal prep for every Sunday at 3 p.m. That's something that I use personally. It's just every Sunday is meal prep day. So again, how can we basically give everything a place to live, or give those key habits a place to live on your calendar? All right, so questions to ask around this are, how will you know when it's time to take action each day or each week, depending on if this is a habit we need to do daily, weekly, or whatever it is? Or when do you believe is the best time to perform this habit? So if we're talking about exercise, for most people, that's earlier in the morning before they get busy with life. Again, not doesn't work for everyone, and that's okay. But just think about, when do you believe is the best time for you to perform this habit? So give it a place to live on your calendar. Figure out when you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, with whom, if this is something you're doing with another party. But again, implementation intention or using a calendar could be extremely, extremely beneficial way to help you stay on track and get things done that you need to do. The next strategy is to create an if-then plan. All right, create an if-then plan. All right, and what I mean by that is to identify potential challenges in advance in order to create contingency plans. All right, another phrase that I've heard another way that I've heard to talk about this is what's called scenario storming. This is like one of the few times that I would actually say like it's almost good to be negative or to think have a negative mindset around like what could go wrong. And so by identifying what could go wrong in advance, you can better prepare for it and have some alternative plans. So, a couple examples. All right, if my workday runs late, causing me to not want to cook dinner, then I'm going to opt for a protein shake. I've already got a contingency plan in mind for if things don't go according to plan. Or something that Alicia and I do pretty regularly is anytime we're traveling, we always pack some protein snacks to provide healthy alternatives to fast food. So we'll have some, whether it's like beef jerky, protein bars, protein powder. But again, anytime we're traveling, we'll always pack protein because we don't want to put ourselves in a position to where we're at an airport, we can't find anything healthy, and so we opt for fast food. Or when we land and there's nothing convenient, again, rather than going, to fast food, we've got something healthy readily available. All right, so some questions that could ask around this would be what may come up that could prevent you from doing this? All right, or what's your plan if life gets in the way? All right, what's the contingency plan? If something gets in the way, what would it probably be? And what can we do as a plan B? What can we do as a backup plan? Again, this is one of the few times where I almost look at it as like thinking negatively can benefit you, where you're just looking at what could possibly go wrong and planning for it accordingly. The next strategy or tactic would be to reduce friction. All right, now what I mean by reducing friction is to eliminate the barriers that make the behavior difficult to execute. Right? Eliminate the behaviors, reduce friction, meaning eliminate the behaviors that make the behavior difficult to execute. Right? So, for example, you've had a long day at work and your plan is to go to the gym afterwards. If you have to run home, well, one, that costs you time. Two, once you go home, if you've had a long day, it's going to be a lot easier to sit down on that couch. So instead, how we could reduce friction or eliminate some of those barriers, we could take our workout clothes with us to work so that we can go straight to the gym versus needing to run home. Another example would be doing some meal prep or having healthy snacks readily available so that when you're exhausted at the end of a long day, you don't have to worry about trying to cook. Another example would be blocking off your work calendar to prevent any sort of scheduling conflicts. That way, if I know, like, hey, I've got my workout scheduled for this time, I need to block on my calendar to prevent someone else from putting something else on it and causing me to have to miss a workout. So I want to reduce as much friction as I can. Some questions to help get you thinking about this are what are the things that make this hard to do? So, what are the things that make eating healthy hard to do? What are the things that make going for a walk hard to do? What are the things that make getting to your appointment at the gym hard to do? Or another way to look at this question, to kind of take the opposite approach, what could we do to make this easier to do? What can we do to make going to the gym easier to do? Well, you can take your workout clothes so you don't have to go home afterward. That's just one example. But again, this applies to our nutrition, any sort of if we're trying to stretch more often, work on our balance, exercise, whatever, you name it. The next strategy that we could look at would be to change the environment, right? And by changing the environment, what I mean is to modify the space to support the desired behaviors and reduce temptation from negative behaviors, right? Good example that we have to live religiously by here at this house is we cannot keep ice cream in the house because if there is ice cream in our house, guess what? I'm gonna eat it. And I have no willpower at the end of a long day. And so again, if there's ice cream in the house, I'm eating it. So in order to help me make better nutritional choices, we just don't keep ice cream in the house. All right. Another example would be to carry a water bottle with you. I've always got my water when I leave the house. All right, I'm changing the environment. If I've got a water bottle with me at all times, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to drink more water. All right, some questions that could help with changing the environment is what's one change you could make at home that would make it easier to do this habit? Again, what's one change you could make at home that would make it easier to do this habit? For me, water's a big one. By carrying water around with me constantly, it makes it really easy to drink a lot of water. You could also ask a different question that may trigger some thoughts or ideas would be how does my environment right now hinder my goals? Again, if I've got ice cream in the house, I'm going to eat it. That's going to hold me back. If you work in an office setting and you got, a jar of M&Ms sitting out in the open, guess what? You're probably more likely to grab a handful of M&Ms and snack on them constantly. So think about how your environment could help you or hurt you and try to change the environment. And keep in mind, when you change the environment, one of the big benefits to this is that you're reducing the need to rely on your willpower. Right? Willpower is an exhaustible resource. It's something we don't just have all the willpower in the world. So we can change our environment to set ourselves up for success, so we have to rely less on our willpower. All right, the next thing that we could do, the next strategy or tactic would be to create an accountability system. Right now, what I mean by creating an accountability system would be to lean on others to improve execution and reinforce progress. Right. So a good example would be a couple of years ago, I was trying to keep a gratitude journal and just wasn't really making any headway with it. I do it for a day and then I wouldn't do it for a week. And so what really helped me get over the hump on keeping a gratitude journal was I talked to a friend of mine who also wanted to keep a gratitude journal. And what we decided to do was each day we would keep a gratitude journal. We would literally, and it was, I was writing by hand, but, and as was he, we would both keep a gratitude journal, snap a photo of it, and then text the other party the photo. And every single day we had to send a photo to the other party just to show that it was like, and whether he read what I wrote and vice versa, it didn't really matter. But it was knowing that it's like, hey, I committed to sharing a photo every day just to show that I actually did the thing that I wanted to do, and so did he, and it worked really well. And that was the first time that I was able to successfully keep a gratitude journal was by sending it to a friend. It doesn't have to be a gratitude journal. It could be a food journal where whether it's a trainer or again a friend, you could keep a food journal and share it with a friend. An app like a MyFitnessPal has a way that you can share an account with other people and they can view and see what you're tracking. You could also take a picture of your dinner. Something that I did years and years ago was I would have clients take a picture of their dinner every night and text it to me. And again, just so, and it helped them make better decisions because they knew, shoot, I've got to share a photo of this. And if it's something really bad, if I'm sending a photo of pizza, I'm going to hear about it tomorrow. And so it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a trainer. There's a lot of different ways that this could come into play. But lean on others to reinforce the right behaviors, to hold you accountable, and just to kind of stick to whatever it is you need to do. Some questions around this would be what could you do to increase your accountability for doing this habit? Again, it could be something nutritionally. We could be talking about exercise. Doesn't really matter. But what could we do to increase my accountability for doing this habit? Or what's one thing I could do to add accountability, just like I shared with the gratitude journal, right? The next thing that we could do would be to track the habit, right? And what I mean by track the habit is to measure quantifiable output of a behavior, right? Good example would be this Aura ring that I love the Aura ring, simple, great. I'm a big fan of it. But how can I measure my output or quantify my progress of a behavior? I use the Oura Ring to track my step count daily and my sleep. And so again, I could, and you don't need to use that. There's a lot of different ways you could use a Fitbit. Apple Watch has a ton of different things you can track. But how can I measure and track how can I quantify my output or my execution? It could be measuring your step count daily. It could be printing off a calendar like I've got right here behind me, printing off a calendar and check off the days I exercise. I've went through periods of time where when I was trying to write a lot, I had a printed calendar and I would write in pencil. How many words did I write that day? It could be like, hey, I'm trying to avoid sweets. So every day I avoid sweets, I'm going to put a big X on the calendar. We've used different habit trackers for various challenges over the years that people have found really helpful. So just having something simple, again, you don't really need to overthink this. It could be just something, a generic calendar, which is what I've used at different times. But having something that you can really measure and quantify your output, it can be really powerful. Some questions that you could ask yourself around this would be, what type of tracking would motivate you and or not stress you out? I would say this is one that you can definitely take too far to an extreme. And I've made this mistake myself in years past. If you're trying to track 27 different things, it's probably not going to end well. There's not, it's just, you're going to feel overwhelmed and it's just going to take up so much time. Who's got that much time? So, what type of tracking motivates you while also not stressing you out or leaving you feeling overwhelmed? Or what would be the easiest way for you to track your progress with this habit? Another example would be like saying, hey, I'm going to do the in body every, 6 weeks, give or take. And so that would be another easy way to track your progress on making sure that you're getting the results from your strength training that you want. Another example, we're almost done. Got two more to go, but throwing a bunch of different things at you. Another example would be to create a reward system. And so what that means is to tie something enjoyable to the behavior. Now, first thing that always comes to mind in our society when it's time to celebrate, what do we turn to? Usually it's food and alcohol. That's probably not our when we're talking about like health and fitness. That's probably not the best reward system. I guess after something big, do what you want to do. But let's tie something enjoyable to the behavior. Let's create a reward system. And so, for example, it could be after I work out 12 times this month, or after I go for a walk 12 times this month, I'm going to buy myself a new pair of shoes. If shoes are your thing, and not saying, that's the right or wrong thing, just figure out, a new outfit, new pair of shoes, new t-shirt, whatever the case may be. Or another example of how you can create a reward system would be I can only listen to my favorite podcast while I'm on the treadmill. My wife Alicia has one that she can only watch we have a treadmill with a TV in front of it, and she can only watch her trashy TV shows that she likes while she's on the treadmill. So there is a reward system. The more she walks, the more active she is, the more she gets to watch her awful TV shows. Some questions that you could ask around this topic would be, how can you reward yourself after completion? Again, it could be by listen. Oh, I get to listen to this podcast. I'm going to take myself or my spouse and I are going to go out for a movie. I'm going to buy a new pair of shoes, a new outfit, you name it. So a lot of different things that you could that could work here. But again, my suggestion would be preferably not just going straight to food or alcohol, which is what a lot of people do to celebrate things. And then the last suggestion, the last strategy that I have to share is to eliminate the gray area, right? And what I mean by that is create clear rules to define what should or shouldn't happen, which is going to help reduce decision fatigue. All right. So eliminate the gray area. This is something that I'm guilty of myself a lot. Would be, it's like, well, it's just one handful of M&Ms. Well, it's just one time. And we know it's never just one time. So the more clear rules you can have in place about what should or shouldn't happen, it's going to be better because you're going to reduce decision fatigue. All right. You're not going to have to talk yourself into it because it's white and black. So some good examples of this would be, I cannot watch TV unless I've worked out that day. So I cannot watch TV unless I've worked out today. I cannot have alcohol Sunday through Thursday. I cannot have sweets more than once a week. I must have, let's just say, 50 ounces of water by noon every day. Those are all clear rules, so there's no gray area there. You don't want to say, oh, I should, I'm trying to drink more water. You should say, I have to have 50 ounces of water by noon. I'm not saying 50 ounces should be your number. I'm just making up a scenario here. But try to eliminate any of that gray area because it's going to make it easier for you to know exactly. It's like, should I do this? Yes or no? It's not a maybe. So some questions that you could ask yourself around this are, how can we make it more clear exactly what you need to do in order to succeed? Again, how can we make it more clear exactly what you need to do to succeed? And again, that could be no alcohol these 5 nights a week, or no going out to eat these 5 nights a week, or no sweets other than Saturday night, or pizza only Friday nights. Again, make it crystal clear to the best of your ability so that you don't have to worry about like trying to convince yourself, well, it's just this one time, I'll be okay. So again, think about another question to ask. How can we create rules so that we don't have to overthink this? So those are some questions that you can ask. All right, now to wrap this up and really put it into practice, because I know I just threw a ton at you. All right, I've got 3 things to think about here. All right, as far as like summarizing it and putting it into practice. One, first thing, determine the 1 to 2 habits that would have the biggest impact on your success. Now, when we're talking about habits, I tend to put them into a couple categories. Habits around, and when we look at like more holistically what most of us are trying to work towards. And those habits typically for me fall into the categories of they're either nutrition related, they're activity related, and by activity you could mean like your strength training, working on your balance, incorporating more stretching, going for walks, or like measuring your just activity or steps or whatever. And then the third one I would look at as like recovery or stress management or sleep. So again, when I think about key habits to help people improve their health and their fitness overall, I generally categorize them into 3 buckets: nutrition, activity, and like recovery or stress management. And so I would say, look at what are the 1 to 2 habits that would have the biggest impact on your success. Typically, I'm not going to pick more than one per category. Now, remember from the beginning, one of the mistakes people make is to change too many things at once. So we're playing the long game. This is something we've got to sustain for the rest of our lives. And so think about what's 1 or 2 things that we could do that's going to make the biggest impact. All right. Once you've figured out what are those 1 to 2 things, then the next question is determine the 1 to 2 strategies that you can use with those 1 to 2 habits. So we just covered 11 different specific strategies that you could use with those habits. All right. Now, definitely don't need to use all 11, but I would suggest for any new habit you're trying to do, if you can implement 1 to 2 of those strategies, it's definitely going to help improve your likelihood of success. And so determine what are the 1 to 2 strategies that you could use with each habit. And then the third and final thing I want to leave you with is how can you get started in the next 24 hours? Again, in the beginning, we said one of the big mistakes people make is they wait until the perfect time to get started. I'm suggesting please don't do that because the time's never going to be right. So just get started in the next 24 hours. No matter if it fails, that's okay. It's an opportunity to learn. So, but just do something, take some small, tiny action. So, again, to recap, determine what are the 1 to 2 habits that are going to have the most impact on your success. From there, determine the 1 to 2 strategies that you could use with each of those habits to help you change those behaviors and sustain the new behaviors. And then number 3, take action. Get started in the next 24 hours. If you do those 3 things, I'm very confident you will not be disappointed.